The order came down like a death sentence. No air support. It's over. On the ground, SEAL Team Valor braced for annihilation as enemy armor closed in. But across the base, in a forgotten hangar, a rusted door groaned open. Inside sat a mothballed A-10 Warthog and one woman who'd been erased from the record. She placed her hand on the throttle and whispered, "Not today." What happened next turned a discarded pilot into a legend and exposed a betrayal at the very top of command. Stay with us, because this story will take you from hopeless silence to the roar of Avenger cannons, and the twist will blow your mind. If you believe hidden courage deserves the spotlight, hit subscribe right now and join us here on A Simple Woman, because Evelyn Cole's fight is just beginning. The order came down like a death sentence. No air support. It's over. The voice of General Harrington crackled across the comms, final and cold, leaving. SEAL Team Valor stranded in a valley where steel and fire were already closing in. Major Ramirez heard it through the static, his jaw tightening as enemy armor crested the ridgeline. Private Dawson, the youngest in the team, swallowed hard. Knowing what those words meant, they had been abandoned. The men shifted in the mud, weapons clutched with the kind of grim acceptance only soldiers know. Above them, the sky stayed empty. But not every ear that caught Harrington's decree belonged to a man willing to watch comrades die. Across the sprawling base hundreds of miles away, in the shadow of forgotten hangars, Captain Evelyn Cole stood frozen as the order echoed through the loudspeaker. She was not supposed to hear it. Officially, Evelyn Cole was a logistics officer, grounded years ago, her wings clipped by bureaucracy and whispers of insubordination. She pushed papers now, signed requisition forms, and walked past rows of aircraft that she once commanded with ease. Yet when Harrington said it was over, something inside her stirred, a fury long buried. Because Evelyn Cole had not always been a ghost in the system. Once, she had been a name that carried weight across every squadron, the woman who could make the A-10 Warthog dance like a hawk over a battlefield. They had tried to erase that name, to reduce her to silence. But the sound of men being written off to die lit a fuse she could no longer ignore. Her boots carried her past rows of humming generators and rusting vehicles until she reached Hangar 14. The doors groaned as she heaved them open, dust cascading from steel beams. Inside, sleeping under tarps and neglect, was a beast as forgotten as she was. The A-10 Razorback, paint faded, fuselage scarred by years of service. Her palm brushed the cool metal, and in that touch she felt a pulse, an echo of every sortie. Every scream of the J-8 Avenger cannon, every life saved when all seemed lost. She whispered, "Not today." The control panel flickered as she powered the systems. Hydraulic pumps whined in protest, engines coughed before roaring awake. Mechanics down the tarmac turned their heads, disbelief spreading across their faces. She had no clearance, no orders, no sanction from command. But Evelyn Cole had never needed permission to do what was right. Back in the valley, Ramirez barked coordinates, trying to hold the perimeter. Dawson's voice cracked as he counted the enemy vehicles rolling closer. The sound of treads grinding stone echoing through the hills. The team's ammo was running low when the first tank shell slammed into the ridge above them, showering dirt and shrapnel. Ramirez muttered to himself, "So this is it." Then came the sound they thought they would never hear, a distant thunder, low and guttural, rising fast. The distinctive growl of twin turbofans that every soldier on the ground knew by heart. Men lifted their heads, eyes widening as the clouds split and a silhouette cut across the sky. Broad wings, engines mounted high, a shark-like nose bristling with menace. The A-10 Warthog had returned. Dawson shouted, half in fear, half in awe, "That can't be real." But it was real. Evelyn Cole pulled the Razorback into a dive, the cannon beneath her snarling to life, tearing The earth as armor columns disintegrated under a hail of depleted uranium rounds. Fire blossomed, steel shattered, enemy formations broke. For SEAL Team Valor, it was as if the heavens themselves had answered. In the command bunker, Harrington slammed a fist on the table, eyes narrowing as reports screamed through his headset. Who authorized that sortie? Who put a Warthog in the air? No one answered, because everyone knew. Only one pilot could make the A-10 sing like that. Only one pilot had the nerve to spit in the face of orders. And as Evelyn banked the Razorback for another pass, her voice cracked across the comms, steady as stone, court-martial me later. Men are still alive down there. Engines roared as Evelyn Cole pushed the Razorback into a climb, the A-10 shuddering like a beast, long-chained, now remembering its strength. Warning lights blinked red across the dash. Systems she hadn't tested, hydraulics that hadn't been serviced in years, but the aircraft held. Below, the valley seethed with enemy armor pouring toward SEAL Team Valor. Evelyn locked eyes on the cluster of tanks breaking formation and felt the old instincts take command. She banked hard, lined up the shot, and squeezed. The GA-8 Avenger cannon erupted in a scream that shook the mountains, spitting a torrent of rounds that tore into the lead vehicle. Fire blossomed as the tank folded in on itself, shockwaves rippling through the enemy line. Another burst chewed up the convoy behind it, scattering infantry into the dust. In the valley, Ramirez's men erupted with disbelief. "It's her!" Dawson shouted, his voice cracking over the comms. "She's real!" For months they had traded campfire stories about a pilot who once broke. Through impossible odds, the legend who disappeared into silence. Now, the legend's shadow streaked across the battlefield, and for the first time that day, hope flared. But the victory was short-lived. Harrington's voice thundered over Evelyn's comms, sharp enough to cut through the roar of her engines. "Cole, disengage immediately. You are flying without clearance. Land that aircraft or face arrest on landing." She almost laughed. Arrest? With tanks chewing through American soldiers? Evelyn pressed the comm button, her voice flat and unshaken. "Court-martial me later, General. I've got men still breathing down there." "Cole, that's an order." She ignored him, banking low for another run. On the ground, enemy RPG teams scrambled into position. Tracer rounds streaked past her canopy, one grazing the wing with a spray of sparks. Evelyn gritted her teeth, dipped lower, and unleashed another torrent of fire that silenced the gunners in a storm of dirt and steel. Harrington's voice snapped back, more desperate now. "You'll kill us politically if you keep flying. This mission is unsanctioned." Evelyn thought of the men pinned in the valley, of Ramirez barking coordinates while holding his team, together with grit, of Dawson barely old enough to shave, gripping his rifle with white knuckles. She thought of the years she had been told she didn't belong, that her refusal to abandon soldiers made her a liability. Rage flared hot in her chest. "If saving them ruins your politics, sir, then maybe they should be ruined." The next wave of fire came harder. Shoulder-fired missiles streaked up from the ridgeline, their trails of smoke cutting across the sky. Evelyn yanked the Razorback into a dive, alarms shrieking as the missiles closed. She dumped flares, banking tight between the canyon walls. Explosions rocked behind her, heat washing through the cockpit. The A-10 groaned but kept flying. She leveled out, sweat dripping down her temple. The Warthog was wounded but not broken. Just like her, she throttled forward, determined to prove both still had fight left. On the ground, Ramirez's voice came through ragged but alive. "Whoever you are up there, keep doing it. You're the only thing between us and a grave. Name's Cole," she said into the open channel, surprising even herself with how steady it sounded. "And I'm not done yet." The team erupted with cheers that cut through the chaos. For a moment it wasn't just fire and fear, it was belief. Belief that one pilot could defy an order, defy a general, and drag them back from the edge. But Evelyn knew this was only the first round. Harrington wouldn't stop pushing to ground her. The enemy wouldn't stop throwing fire at the sky. And the Razorback wouldn't survive endless punishment. She tightened her grip on the stick, eyes scanning for the next threat. The battle was just beginning, and she had already chosen her side. Evelyn dropped the Razorback into the throat of the valley, the walls of rock closing around her like a coffin. The air shook with cannon fire as she leveled her sights on the convoy, pushing toward Ramirez's position. Tanks lumbered forward, turrets swiveling too slowly to track her. She pulled the trigger, and the GAU-8 answered, vomiting fire that ripped through steel. One tank erupted in a bloom of flame. Another careened sideways into the ravine wall, spilling smoke as its crews scrambled out. Infantry scattered, their formation shredded by the storm of tungsten rounds. On the ground, SEAL Team Valor fought to hold their lines, eyes locked upward at the predator swooping overhead. Dawson shouted over comms, voice tinged with awe. "She's carving them apart. It's like watching thunder take shape." Ramirez didn't answer, but the hard edge in his tone eased as he barked new coordinates. The impossible was happening. The tide was turning. Evelyn banked hard, the Razorback hugging the canyon walls. Dust and rock fragments kicked up as her wing nearly scraped the cliff. She spotted an armored column threading through the choke point. Perfect. She angled down, heart steady, and let the Avenger roar again. The rounds tore into the lead vehicle, setting off a chain reaction as the convoy behind it crumpled into wreckage. For a moment, the valley belonged to her. But victory always draws fire. The first hit came sudden and brutal, an RPG screaming from the ridgeline. Evelyn juked left, but the explosion caught her tail, jolting the cockpit. Warning lights flared across the dash, alarms howling. The Razorback coughed smoke, shuddering as if wounded. Evelyn gritted her teeth and leveled out. "You're fine, we're fine." More tracers lanced up from the hillsides. Enemy fighters had regrouped, dragging heavy machine guns into place. Bullets hammered the fuselage, a metallic hailstorm clanging against her armor. The A-10 was built to take punishment, but even steel has limits. Panels rattled loose, and her left wingtip sparked under the barrage. She dived low, skimming the tree line, and unleashed another strafing run that silenced the guns in bursts of fire. But each maneuver cost her. Hydraulic pressure dropped, a warning light flashing amber. She tapped the gauge, muttering under her breath. "Hold together, girl. Just a little longer." Down below, Ramirez's voice cut in. "Cole, you saved us, but you've got smoke trailing. You can't keep this up." "I'm not here to keep it up," she shot back. "I'm here to finish it." She pulled back on the stick, climbing for altitude. The world narrowed to breath and steel. Ahead, she saw enemy reinforcements pouring in, trucks bristling with men, armored carriers grinding through the mud. She lined them up, squeezed, and the Avenger screamed one more time. Explosions rippled through the convoy, fire lighting the canyon in hellish orange. But the retaliation was immediate. A missile lock warning blared, piercing her ears. She yanked the Razorback into a roll, flares spitting from the wings. The missile streaked past, exploding harmlessly above, but the shockwave rattled her bones. Another lock shrieked almost instantly. Evelyn dumped more flares, banked hard, but the strain was punishing. Her ribs slammed against the harness, pain flashing through her side. The Razorback groaned, coughing smoke with every turn. Systems bled warnings across her display. She silenced them one by one, not because they weren't real, but because she didn't have the luxury of listening. Through the chaos, a thought pressed into her chest. Harrington had called this fight over, had condemned Valor to die. She couldn't let him be right. If she had to burn with the Warthog, so be it. "Ramirez," she said into the open channel, her voice calm despite the alarms. "Tell your men to move. I'll clear the path." There was a pause, then Ramirez's steady reply. "We move on your mark." Evelyn banked for another run, the A-10 trailing smoke like a wounded beast, but her eyes were sharp. She had taken the valley once already, and she would do it again, even if the Razorback fell apart beneath her. General Harrington's voice cut through the static like a blade. "Cole, You will disengage immediately. Land that aircraft now. This is your final warning." His tone carried the authority of rank and the fury of a man who had lost control of his battlefield. Evelyn's cockpit glowed red with warnings, the Razorback trembling under her grip. Smoke trailed behind her like a wounded animal, but the engine still answered, stubborn and alive. She flicked her comm switch, her voice steady. "With respect, sir, Valor is still pinned. I'm not leaving them. Cole, you're violating direct orders. You've compromised this entire operation. If you continue, you will face arrest and permanent discharge." Harrington's words spat like gunfire. Evelyn smirked grimly. "Arrest me later. Right now, I've got tanks to kill." She shoved the throttle forward, diving for another run. The Avenger roared, spitting fire into a line of armored carriers that erupted into fireballs. SEAL Team Valor cheered over the open channel, voices filled with renewed fight. But back at command, Harrington wasn't finished. He turned to his staff, fury etched across his face. "If she won't stand down, then bring her down. Deploy military police to the refueling strip. If she touches ground, I want her in cuffs before her engines cool." Across the base, squads of armed MPs scrambled into Humvees, engines roaring as they sped toward the auxiliary runway. Word spread like wildfire. Cole had gone rogue, and the general wanted her stopped. Mechanics exchanged glances, whispers rising. Some muttered admiration, others fear. Sergeant Mara Ward, the grizzled chief of ground crews, heard the order and spat into the dirt. "They can try," she muttered, then barked at her crew to prep emergency refuel gear. In the air, Evelyn caught fragments of chatter bleeding through her comms. MPs moving, orders to intercept. Her stomach tightened, but she forced the thought away. She couldn't think about handcuffs or tribunals, not yet. Missile lock alarms wailed again. She yanked the Razorback into a brutal turn, flares streaking into the sky. The missile overshot, detonating above the ridge. The shockwave rattled her teeth. She leveled out, breathing hard, her hands slick against the controls. "Cole," Harrington's voice thundered again. "You're not saving anyone. You're only proving why you were grounded in the first place. You can't be trusted to follow orders." She laughed bitterly, sweat dripping down her temple. "Funny thing about orders, General. They don't mean much to men who never come home. I don't fly for you, I fly for them." On the valley floor, Ramirez keyed his mic, voice sharp with urgency. "Cole, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. We've got a window, but not for long." "Copy," she replied. "Move while I've still got teeth." She banked low, engines screaming, and tore through a line of technicals bristling with heavy guns. The Avenger chewed them to pieces, flames licking the canyon walls. Valor surged forward, pressing the attack under her cover. Back at base, Harrington's patience snapped. "Shut her down if she tries to land. I don't care if you have to block the runway with trucks." "She is finished." Ward heard the order clearly this time. She stood with her crew on the edge of the runway, hands resting on fuel hoses, eyes narrowed at the MPs already roaring toward them. "Over my dead body," she growled. Her crew exchanged tense looks, but every one of them nodded. They had seen Cole take off. They had heard the stories. And now they saw the smoke trail in the distance, proof she was still fighting while the rest of command hid behind screens. Evelyn glanced at her dwindling fuel gauge, her throat tight. She needed that strip, needed Ward's crew, and she knew what awaited her if she touched down. Arrest, chains, disgrace. But Valor still needed her in the air, and she wasn't about to let them fall. Her comm buzzed again, Harrington's voice iron hard. "Cole, if you attempt to land, MPs will be waiting. This is treason." She keyed her mic, her words like steel. "Then call me a traitor, because I'm not done yet." She pulled the Razorback into another dive, alarms shrieking, flames trailing from her wing. The war was no longer just against the enemy in the valley. Now she fought her own command as well, and Evelyn Cole had no intention of folding to either. The fuel gauge bled toward empty, its needle trembling against the red. Evelyn knew the Razorback had maybe 10 minutes left in her before the engines coughed dry. She keyed her mic. "Valor, this is Cole. I'm Bingo Fuel. You've got to push without me for a stretch." Ramirez's reply came back immediately, rough with static. "Cole, if you leave now, we're boxed. You've bought us minutes, but not enough." "I'm not leaving," she said, her jaw set. "I'll be back in the fight before you know it." "Hold." She yanked the Razorback toward the makeshift strip Ward had prepared days earlier. The battered runway stretched across frozen earth, barely long enough for a bird this heavy. She could already see figures scrambling across it, Ward and her crew racing against time. "Come on, girl," Evelyn muttered, coaxing the Warthog down. The landing gear screeched as it hit tarmac, sparks flying as rubber kissed steel. The Razorback groaned but held. She rolled to a stop, engines snarling, smoke curling from her wing. Ward was there before the wheels cooled, slapping her hand against the fuselage. "You've got maybe 5 minutes of grace before MPs get here," she shouted over the roar. "We'll give you 3. Her crew surged into motion, hoses dragging, fuel spilling into tanks. Ammunition loaders sprinted across the tarmac with belts of 30mm shells, feeding the Avenger as fast as they could. Evelyn ripped off her helmet, hair plastered with sweat. "Ward, if they catch you doing this..." Ward cut her off, her eyes blazing. "Don't insult me. We've all heard the comms. Harrington wrote those boys off. You didn't. That's the difference." Engines idled rough, coughing like dying lungs. Evelyn glanced toward the perimeter and saw headlights. A line of Humvees barreling closer, MPs bristling with rifles. Over the radio, Harrington's voice came like thunder. "Cole, stand down. Ward, if you aid her, you'll be court-martialed alongside that traitor." Ward spat in the dirt. "Let him try." She turned to her crew. "Double time. Get her airborne." The MPs skidded to a halt at the edge of the strip. Men piling out, weapons raised. The lead sergeant barked, "Shut down the aircraft. Step away." Ward stepped in front of the nose gear, arms crossed. Not happening. Behind her, 2 mechanics stood shoulder to shoulder, holding nothing but wrenches, but their stance was unflinching. The MPs hesitated, eyes flicking to the smoldering A-10, to the woman who had just saved Valor from certain death. No one moved forward. Inside the cockpit, Evelyn's radio crackled. A scrambled signal cut through, garbled but clear enough. Weapons cache, serial numbers, US origin. Her stomach clenched. She glanced at the ammo belts feeding into the Avenger and saw a stenciled marking half-burned by friction, property of US Army. Her blood ran cold. The enemy weapons she'd shredded in the valley, SAMs, RPGs, armor-piercing rounds, she had thought them stolen or black market, but the markings told a different story. These weren't foreign imports. They were American stock, rerouted and placed in enemy hands. Her gut twisted. Harrington hadn't just abandoned Valor, he'd armed their killers. "Ward," Evelyn shouted, urgency slicing through her voice. "They're feeding the enemy. It's coming from our own stores." Ward's face hardened. "I knew it." The MPs advanced a step, but hesitation lingered. The sergeant barked again, less certain now. "Shut it down, Cole!" Evelyn slammed her helmet back on. Not a chance. She keyed her mic, her words cutting straight into Harrington's channel. "General, I just saw serial numbers on enemy rounds. Our numbers. You want to explain how US munitions ended up pointed at Valor?" Silence. Then Harrington's voice, colder than steel. "You're out of line, Captain. Finish this stunt, and you'll never see another day in uniform." She almost laughed. "After what I've seen, I wouldn't wear your uniform if you begged me." Ward's crew yanked the hoses free, slapping the fuselage. "Go, Cole!" Engines howled as Evelyn throttled up. MPs scrambled forward, some shouting, some lifting rifles. Ward and her crew held their ground. The Warthog surged down the strip, bullets sparking harmlessly against its armor as she roared past the blockade and back into the sky. The horizon opened before her. black smoke curling into dawn. Ramirez's voice broke through comms, ragged but alive. "Cole, you're back?" She grinned despite the exhaustion. "I told you I wasn't done yet." But beneath the adrenaline, a darker fire burned. Harrington hadn't just written off her team. He was feeding the war from both sides. And if he thought she would stay silent, he had no idea who he was dealing with. The Razorback climbed into the clouds, the Avenger reloaded, tanks refueled, and a pilot reborn. This was no longer about disobeying orders. It was about exposing a betrayal festering at the very heart of command. The Razorback clawed its way back into the sky, fuel tanks heavy, magazines reloaded, the Avenger once again hungry. Evelyn's pulse steadied as she leveled out, scanning the ridgelines where smoke still curled. Valor's position was holding, but barely. Ramirez's voice broke through her headset, jagged with interference. "Cole, they're regrouping. North Ridge. We're seeing movement like they're setting up something big." Evelyn narrowed her eyes. She'd seen this dance before. Artillery didn't move like that, nor did armor. It was too deliberate, too careful. Then the lock warning screamed in her cockpit, high-pitched, unrelenting. Not the blunt hiss of an RPG, not the jagged spike of a manpad. This was clean, calculated, a radar-guided SAM. "Damn," she hissed. The kind of system that wasn't supposed to be in these mountains, the kind of system only a well-connected supplier could deliver, and she already knew which general's fingerprints would be on the paperwork. Alarms blared louder, lights strobing across her dash. The missile was up, slashing through the sky on a burning tail. Evelyn shoved the stick forward, the Razorback dropping like a stone into the canyon. G-forces slammed her chest, her vision tunneling as the missile followed. She punched out flares, the night sky erupting in streaks of fire. For one terrible second, she thought the lock held. Then the missile veered, detonating behind her with a thunder that shook the mountain. Her lungs ached, her hands trembled on the stick, but she held steady, one missile down. But her system screamed again, another lock. They had more. "Valor," she barked. "They've got a radar bird up there. SAM class, radar guided. That hardware doesn't come from scavengers." Ramirez spat a curse. "So Harrington's fingerprints are all over this?" Evelyn grit her teeth. "Yeah, and I'm about to rip them off." She banked wide, climbing hard, baiting the radar into following her. Another missile streaked up, hungry and precise. She rode the climb until the lock screamed in her skull, then cut power, dropping flares and dragging the Warthog into a brutal barrel roll. The missile overshot, tearing past her canopy so close the heat seared her wing. The Razorback shuddered, smoke coughing from her engines, but the old bird held. Evelyn's eyes locked on the ridgeline, and then she saw it, a camouflaged launcher, dishes spinning, operators scrambling as her shadow fell across them. "Avenger, sing for me," she whispered, and squeezed. The GAU-8 thundered, spitting death into the radar dish. The launcher erupted, fire swallowing the crew. The SAM silenced in a blossom of flame. Valor erupted over comms, their cheers cutting through the chaos. Dawson's voice cracked, young and raw. "She killed the SAM. We're clear." But Evelyn wasn't celebrating. Her stomach churned as the implications crystallized. That radar system wasn't just black market. It was pristine, still wearing factory tags, serial numbers fresh, the kind of gear delivered in sealed crates straight from our stockpiles. She pressed her mic to the command frequency. "General Harrington, I've just neutralized a radar-guided SAM that never should have been in enemy hands. You want to explain how American serial numbers ended up painted on their launcher?" For a beat, silence. Then Harrington's voice returned, cold and sharp. "Cole, you are one mistake away from being declared hostile. If you continue this line of questioning, you'll never see daylight outside of a cell." She let the silence hang before answering. "You already buried me once, General. I've got nothing left to lose." She cut the channel, throat tight but heart steady. Harrington's mask had slipped. She knew it, and soon others would too. He could bark about treason all he wanted, but the truth was in flames on that ridge. The Razorback circled back toward Valor's position, battered but unbowed. Evelyn exhaled hard, smoke still trailing from her wing, her body aching from the G-forces. She'd faced the SAM and lived, but the bigger fight wasn't in the skies. It was in the command centers and war rooms, in the betrayal festering behind polished stars on Harrington's shoulders. And she had just become the one voice willing to call it out. The Razorback limped across the valley sky, smoke trailing from its scarred wings. Evelyn's hands ached from the stick, every muscle taut from the punishing maneuvers. Below, Valor pushed forward under her cover fire, seizing the opening she had carved. For the first time all night, survival looked possible. But survival wasn't enough. The pieces she had seen, the US markings on enemy weapons, the factory-fresh radar launcher, burned in her mind. This wasn't negligence, it was orchestration. And the man barking orders over her comms had his fingerprints all over it. Static cracked as Harrington's voice filled her headset again, strained now, like a mask slipping. "Cole, you will disengage. Return to base immediately." "That's an order." She keyed the mic, voice flat. "An order to cover your tracks? You've been feeding them, haven't you? Our weapons, our systems, straight into enemy hands." For a moment, there was silence. Then Harrington's tone dropped, colder than she had ever heard. "You don't know what you're talking about, and if you value your life, Captain, you'll shut that mouth before it buries you." Her stomach turned. He hadn't denied it. On the ground, Ramirez's voice broke in, urgent. "Cole, we're intercepting a signal." Harrington's channel. "He's not just barking at you, he's coordinating. With them." Evelyn's blood ran cold. "Say that again." Ramirez didn't hesitate. "We cracked a frequency piggybacked on his orders. He's feeding grid positions to the enemy, lining us up for the kill. Our general sold us out." Private Dawson, breathless but furious, shouted into the channel. "The bastard tried to kill us twice over, first by pulling air support, then by handing them our coordinates." Evelyn's chest tightened. She had suspected betrayal, but hearing it laid bare was different. Harrington wasn't incompetent, he was a traitor. She banked hard, circling above the valley, the Razorback groaning in protest. Her comms crackled again, but this time the voice wasn't Harrington's. It was another officer, sharp and terrified. "General, we've got chatter. Your channel's exposed. They know." And then Harrington himself roaring, forgetting pretense. "Bring her down. Bring that damn Warthog out of the sky." From the ridges, new missile locks screamed across her dash. She yanked the stick, dumping flares, the night sky erupting in bursts of fire. One missile shot wide, another clipped past her canopy, rattling the cockpit. The Razorback coughed smoke, shuddering like a wounded animal. "Valor, move now," she barked. "He's thrown everything at me." "You've got an opening. Take it." Ramirez didn't argue. Copy. Valor advancing. On her radar, Evelyn caught fresh blips rising fast. Drones, American drones, arming weapons. Harrington had turned their own sky against her. She muttered under her breath, "You really want me dead that badly, General?" Her comm crackled again. Harrington's voice twisted with venom. "You were supposed to stay buried, Cole. Hindu Kush should have finished you. But since it didn't, I will." The words slammed into her like a fist. Hindu Kush, the mission that had killed her career, that had buried her in paperwork and silence. Harrington hadn't just written her off after the fact. He had orchestrated it. The ambush that wiped out her squad, the intelligence that had placed them in a kill zone, it hadn't been bad luck. It had been his design. The cockpit felt suddenly colder. Her breath came sharp. All these years, she had carried guilt for losing comrades, for disobeying an order to retreat, for surviving when others hadn't. And now she saw the truth. They hadn't died because of her. They had died because Harrington had needed them to. "That's the twist, isn't it?" she whispered, voice shaking but fierce. You didn't ground me because I disobeyed. You grounded me because I lived, because I was the only one who could tell the world what you did." Harrington snarled, but she cut the channel before he could respond. She didn't need more lies. She needed the world to hear what she'd just uncovered. She keyed into Vala's channel, her voice cutting like steel. "Listen up. Harrington killed Deadeye at Hindu Kush. He's been feeding the enemy ever since. He's not a general. He's their supplier. If I don't make it out of here, you carry that truth. You make them hear it." Ramirez's reply came steady, filled with fire. "Copy that. Vala carries it." Dawson added, voice raw. "We've got your back, ma'am. All the way." The drones screamed closer, locking weapons, missiles arming. Evelyn pushed the Razorback into a climb, her battered engines howling. She had one last burst of strength, one last fight. And this time, it wasn't just for Vala. It was for every soldier Harrington had sold to the grave. Her hands tightened on the stick, the sky filled with fire. The war wasn't just against enemies in the valley anymore. It was against the traitor sitting in a command chair, wearing stars he no longer deserved. And Evelyn Cole had every intention of tearing him down. The Razorback wheezed smoke as Evelyn pulled it out of the last climb. Panels rattled loose, the left wing scarred black, alarms blaring in chaotic chorus. She had nothing left to give, yet below Vala was moving, Ramirez's team carving their way out of the valley. Under the cover, she had bought with every ounce of the Warthog's strength. "Cole," Ramirez called through static, "we're clear of the kill zone. You did it." His voice cracked, the disbelief giving way to awe. "You brought us home." Evelyn exhaled a shuddering breath. Her fuel gauges sat near zero. Hydraulic pressure bled into red. She couldn't drag the bird back to base, not in this state. Only one option remained, the forward strip. She turned the nose toward the glow of its lights, whispering to the aircraft like an old friend, "Hold together just a little longer." The runway loomed fast, too fast. She dropped gear, heard one wheel slam into place, the other grinding stubbornly. No time. She eased the Razorback down, sparks screaming as metal kissed concrete. The A-10 skidded, bounced, and finally screeched to a halt in a storm of smoke and fire. Ground crew swarmed, Ward among them, sprinting across the tarmac. She leapt onto the ladder as Evelyn pried the canopy open, coughing through smoke. Ward's hand clamped her shoulder. "You insane, magnificent woman. You just rewrote the book." Evelyn smiled weakly, eyes heavy but defiant. "Just doing the job they wouldn't let me do." Across the valley, Vala's evac helicopters lifted into the dawn. Their voices crackled over comms, cheers mixing with gratitude. Dawson's young tone rose above the rest. "Legend's back. No one can bury her now." In the command bunker, Harrington stood rigid, watching feeds of the burning SAM site, the wrecked armor, the safe extraction of Vala. His staff whispered around him, their faces pale. The evidence was undeniable. American weapons in enemy hands, his voice caught. On leaked transmissions, his traitor pilot now hailed as a savior. He slammed a fist onto the table, but the fury didn't mask the fear creeping into his eyes. The truth had escaped. It rode on Vala's comms, on Ward's crew, on every soldier who had watched Evelyn Cole rise from the grave they dug for her. For years he had buried her under lies, painting her as reckless, untrustworthy. But now the world would see her for what she was. The woman who defied orders to save lives. The pilot who dragged a forgotten Warthog into battle and tore open a general's betrayal. Evelyn sat on the wing of the Razorback, helmet at her side, dawn light catching the smoke curling skyward. Her body ached, her lungs burned, but her eyes were steady. She had chosen the harder fight, and won. "They wanted me erased," she murmured to herself, "but ghosts don't stay buried." Behind her, the Avenger cannon sat silent, its barrels still warm. Ahead of her, a storm waited. Tribunals, politics, retaliation, but none of that mattered. Vala lived, the truth lived, and so did she. The legend of Evelyn Cole was no longer rumor whispered in hangars. It was carved into the battlefield itself, undeniable, unforgettable. If you've stayed with us until now, you've just watched Evelyn Cole rise from the ashes and prove that even when the system tries to erase someone, courage can't be buried. But here's the question for you. If you were in her cockpit, staring at empty fuel gauges and orders to stand down, would you have followed command or defied it to save your brothers on the ground? Drop your answer in the comments. We read every single one. And if stories like this remind you that hidden heroes can still rewrite history, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell right now so you never miss the next story here on A Simple Woman. Don't go just yet. There are more powerful stories waiting for you on screen. Click through to the next video and keep exploring the courage that the world almost forgot.